Last week, environmental reporter Cale Williams told us about Oregon's plan to ship some of our gray wolves to the state of Colorado to reintroduce the species there. Well, it's happened. 5 wolves that were living in Northeast Oregon were captured and flown down and released in Colorado this week. Cale Williams explains.
This is an incredibly important historical moment.
That's Joanna Lambert, professor of wildlife ecology and director of the Candid Project at the University of Colorado. In 2020, Colorado voters passed Proposition 114, which called for the reintroduction of wolves to the state. So for Lambert, the return of wolves to the Rocky Mountains was a cause for celebration.
This is the first time in U.S. history that an endangered species is being reintroduced into an area of its former range by an entity other than U.S. Fish and Wildlife or the federal government.
Of course, not everyone was celebrating the return of the wolf. Ranchers across the West have cited the wolf as a threat to their livestock and their livelihoods. And the wolf has proved to be a political flashpoint, both here in Oregon and in Colorado, where ranchers sued the state to block the release of wolves.
There has been really no reintroduction of wolves anywhere, right, that has not had with it the inertia of controversy.
A judge ruled against them late last week, and on Monday, 5 wolves, 2 juvenile females, 2 juvenile males, and 1 adult male, were released in Grand County, west of Boulder. But Lambert said while there are passionate voices on both sides of the debate, either loving or hating wolves, for most people, the issue is a little more nuanced.
The reality is, for the most part, folks are falling somewhere in between.
The wolves were captured in Wallowa and Union counties over the weekend. Biologists from Colorado Parks and Wildlife made sure they were the right age and sex, then took genetic samples and fitted them with tracking collars. After some vaccinations, the wolves were loaded into crates and flown to Colorado. The plan is to release another 5 to 10 wolves in Colorado by March, with a goal of 30 to 50 wolves total over the next several years. But even with a voter mandate, it was never guaranteed that Colorado would find the wolves it needed. Other western states like Idaho, Montana, and Wyoming, they were unwilling to provide wolves, and they've got plenty. Oregon has a minimum of 178 wolves, according to the most recent numbers. So should we be worried that we're giving up too many? Lambert doesn't think so.
Wolves do well, right? Given half a chance, populations do recruit and do increase. They are a very adaptable, flexible species.
Derek Broman, game program manager for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, said his agency really didn't have much to do with the operation, other than directing officials from Colorado where to find the wolves they were looking for.
So as stewards of the resource, we want to make sure that our populations come first and won't be negatively impacted. But otherwise, it's on them to be successful. And thus far, it seems like it's gone well.
Lambert stressed that the world is facing an extinction crisis, with apex predators like the wolf facing greater threats than other species. For her, seeing wolves back on a landscape where they lived for thousands of years before humans eradicated them, that's just a small step toward restoring what nature intended.
This is not just about putting 10 wolves back into Western Colorado. This is something that is, directly addressing a sense of we can do something about what we are losing on Earth.
Cale's with me now. Super interesting, as always, but I guess Oregon did not actually literally capture the wolves?
No.
Why not?
That was Colorado. I mean, it's not cheap to get a bunch of helicopters up in the air, fly around, find some wolves, dart them, get them in a crate, and ship them off to another state. And so I think that, Oregon saw this as, this doesn't really benefit us, but it doesn't really harm us either. So we'll agree to it, but we're not necessarily going to take on the lion's share of what it costs.
And I know you've been doing a lot of research on this. How are the wolves going to be treated in Colorado?
Well, they are endangered still. They are on the Endangered Species Act federally. They are under the Endangered Species Act with the state, but they are considered an experimental population, which means, as the state says, that they have more management flexibility. And what that means is that there's a lower bar to kill a wolf that is potentially going after livestock or getting into human areas.
Yeah, thanks for the translation from the bureaucratic to the reality.
We try.
And finally, big announcement today from the federal government?
That's right. So the federal government announced today a plan to basically ban logging of old growth on all federal lands. And so this is basically 32 million acres of old growth forest that would be protected under this plan. And the Biden administration said that this plan is because of climate change. Old growth forest can store a lot of carbon dioxide, and they want to keep that in the trees instead of cutting them down, releasing all that carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. But this also does a tremendous amount for species like owls and Pacific salmon, which are endangered and need these habitats to survive. What's interesting, though, is that this plan would not go into effect until 2025. And there's a big event that's happening between now and then, next November,
Yeah.
a presidential election. So it really will probably only happen if Biden is reelected.
And what's the status now of old growth? Are they not protected nationwide?
They are, but it's a little bit of a patchwork. There's the Northwest Forest Plan that protects, old growth in the Northwest. And then there are other forest plans around the country that kind of set aside different parcels of old growth that are off limits to logging.
But it's not just one size fits all as this new plan would be.
Correct.
Yeah, all right. And a little something, I guess, for people who love that to vote for, and for the other side, which I'm sure is not happy about it, to rally against.
Indeed.
It all comes down to those politics.
Doesn't it always?
Thank you, Cale. Appreciate it.
My pleasure.